Money can't buy peace, that was the only thought echoing inside Ethan Cole's mind as he drove away from the glittering city lights he once ruled. His sleek black car sliced through the night like a shadow. Escaping its own reflection, Ethan had everything people dreamed of. He owned a tech company that revolutionized how the world connected. His name was printed in magazines. His home was a mansion with marble floors and glass walls that looked out over the skyline, but none of it mattered anymore, not since the night his wife Clara died. It had been a rainy Friday evening when the call came. The police officer's voice was calm, too calm, like he had said those words too many times before. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cole, there was an accident. A drunk driver, Clara, didn't make it." Those words became the cage that trapped him every waking moment. The sound of rain still haunted him because it reminded him of the night she was taken from him. He stopped sleeping, he stopped eating, and eventually he stopped caring. His friends told him to travel to distract himself. His business partners begged him to return to work. But how could he go back to a world that felt empty without her? Her laugh once filled every corner of their home, and now silence echoed louder than any sound. Could he wandered the halls at night, talking to the air as if she might answer back? He could almost hear her voice, teasing him like she used to. "Ethan, stop working, come to bed, please." But it was only memory and pain. One morning before dawn, he made a decision. He packed a single duffel bag, tossed it into the back seat, and drove with no destination in mind. He didn't care where he ended up, he just needed to go somewhere the memories couldn't follow him. He passed through small towns, fields stretching endlessly under the soft orange glow of sunrise. For the first time in months, the world felt still, not kind, but still. By midday, he found himself in a forgotten rural town, one that looked untouched. By time, there was a dirt road lined with rusted mailboxes and a small wooden sign that said Cedar Grove ahead. At the end of that road, half hidden behind wild trees, stood an old shack with a faded "for sale" sign. It was falling apart, the roof sagging, the paint peeling, yet something about it felt right. Peaceful, quiet, empty. He parked, got out, and stood in front of it. For a long moment, the wind rustled through the trees. A bird called in the distance, and for the first time since Clara's death, Ethan took a deep breath and felt something close to calm. He didn't think, he just acted. He called the number on the sign, spoke to a local agent, and by sunset, the shack was his. No luxury, no noise, no memories, just silence and maybe a chance to breathe again. Ethan had only been in the shack for a week when the silence was broken by a sound that didn't belong there. It was early morning, gray light seeping through the cracks in the window. When he heard it, faint and distant, at first a soft, whimpering cry, he sat up in bed, confused. The forest around him was usually still, only the wind and birds, but this sound was different. It was the sound of a child. He pulled on his jacket and stepped outside. The air was cold, damp with dew. He listened again, and there it was, a second cry, higher pitched, desperate. He followed it past the back of the shack, where the ground sloped toward the woods, and there he saw them, a young woman crouched under a torn blanket, two tiny babies pressed close to her chest. Her clothes were soaked, her hands trembling, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. Ethan froze for a second, unsure what to do. The woman looked up, startled, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, don't call anyone. We just needed a place to rest. I'll go, I promise." He could see she was shivering, the babies wrapped in thin towels, their faces red from crying. The sight hit something deep inside him. A part of his heart, he thought, had died with Clara. Hey, it's all right," he said softly. "I'm not calling anyone." "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but tears slipped down her cheeks. "I'm fine," she whispered. "I just need somewhere safe for the twins." He could hear the honesty in her voice, and also the fear, the kind that comes from being judged, turned away unseen. He took a slow breath, trying to calm her down. "What's your name?" he asked. "Naomi," she said, clutching the babies a little tighter. "And these are Liam and Layla." Ethan knelt down to her level. His voice was steady, gentle. "You can come inside," he said firmly. "It's warmer there." The look on her face was a mix of shock and disbelief, like she wasn't used to kindness. For a moment she hesitated, her eyes darting toward the forest as if deciding whether to trust him. Finally she nodded. Ethan helped her to her feet. The babies were so light in her arms he could tell she hadn't eaten properly in days. When they stepped inside the shack, it suddenly felt alive. Again, Ethan hurried to light the fireplace, found a blanket and handed it to her. Naomi sat quietly by the flames, rocking the twins, until their crying faded to soft sighs. Ethan watched in silence. He didn't know who she was or why she was there, but deep down he sensed this meeting wasn't random. He had come here to escape his pain, but somehow he had stumbled upon someone who carried her own, and maybe, just maybe, fate had brought them together for a reason. For the next few days, Naomi barely spoke. She kept to herself, caring for the twins, while Ethan stayed busy fixing small things around the shack: leaky pipes, loose floorboards, broken windows. They were two strangers bound by silence, both running from something, neither ready to talk about it yet. As the hours passed, Ethan began to notice little things about her: the way she hummed to the babies when she thought no one was listening, the way she looked out the window like she was searching for something far away. One evening, as rain pattered softly against the roof, Ethan made soup and placed a bowl in front of her. "You should eat," he said gently. Naomi hesitated, then whispered, "Thank you." She looked down, her voice trembling. "I don't mean to be a burden. I can leave tomorrow if you want." Ethan shook his head. "No one's asking you to leave," he said. "You and the twins can stay as long as you need." That small act of kindness opened a door. Naomi finally began to speak. She told him about her past, about growing up in foster care, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. She talked about meeting a man who promised her love, then disappeared when she told him she was pregnant. Since then, life had been a series of nights in shelters and days spent worrying about how to feed her babies. Her voice cracked when she said, "Sometimes I wish they had someone better than me." Ethan's heart tightened. He remembered his own nights filled with emptiness and guilt. He leaned back in his chair, his voice low. "Naomi," he said gently, "you're stronger than you think. Most people would have given up, but you didn't. You're still here. You're still fighting." Her eyes filled with tears. She hadn't heard words like that in a long time. For a brief moment, the room felt warm, not just from the fire, but from something deeper, a fragile connection forming between two broken souls. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet rhythm of life in the shack began to change. Ethan repaired old shelves while Naomi read stories to the twins. Their laughter began to echo through the small wooden walls, replacing the silence that once haunted him. Ethan found himself smiling again, without even realizing it. But deep down he was afraid that this small, fragile piece could disappear like everything else he had ever cared about. He had already lost once, and he wasn't sure if he could survive losing again. Yet every time he looked at Naomi and the twins, he couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, they were meant to heal each other. The calm days didn't last forever. Evening, dark clouds began to gather over the forest, the wind howling through the trees like a warning. Ethan stepped outside and felt the first drops of rain, heavy, cold, relentless. Within minutes, the sky broke open and the storm roared down. The old shack shuddered under the forced thunder, rattling the windows. Naomi rushed to cover the twins, her face pale with fear, while Ethan tried to seal the gaps in the roof with old boards and blankets. The storm grew worse, rain pouring in through cracks, lightning flashing across the sky. The babies began to cry, their tiny voices drowned by the thunder. Ethan could see Naomi shaking, not from the cold, but from pure panic. He moved quickly, wrapping the twins in dry blankets and grabbing the car keys. "We have to go," he said loudly over the wind. "It's not safe here." She hesitated, clutching the babies tightly, but where Ethan pointed to the road, "We'll find somewhere, just come on." They ran through the stormwater, soaking them to the bone, branches whipping across their faces. The car's headlights barely cut through the sheets of rain, but Ethan drove slowly, carefully, until he spotted a flicker of light ahead, a small roadside inn. He pulled in and rushed Naomi and the twins inside. The woman at the front desk gasped when she saw them and quickly offered towels and a room. Inside the small warm space, Naomi sank to the floor, the twins sleeping in her arms. Her voice cracked with emotion. "Why are you helping us? You don't even know me." Ethan sat down across from her, his face calm but his eyes heavy. "Because I know what it feels like to lose everything," he said quietly. "I couldn't save the person I loved. I can't change But maybe I can help someone else before it's too late. Naomi looked at him for a long moment, tears rolling down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. You've been through so much. Ethan shook his head. Don't be sorry. Maybe this is how I find peace again. For a while, neither of them spoke. The storm still raged outside, but inside there was a strange stillness, a kind of understanding. Naomi reached out, gently touching his hand. Maybe, she said softly, we were meant to find each other, not to fix the past, but to start again. The thunder rolled one last time before fading into quiet, and in that silence both of them felt something neither had felt in a long time: hope. When morning came, the world outside was washed clean, the storm gone, leaving the earth fresh and quiet. The sunlight poured through the window of the little inn, touching Naomi's face as she slept beside the twins. Ethan stood by the window watching them, a faint smile on his lips. He had planned to disappear from the Yao world, but somehow life had found him again in the form of a young mother and her two tiny children. Over the next few weeks, they returned to the shack together. Ethan rebuilt what the storm had broken, stronger. This time, new wood, fresh paint, sturdy walls. He worked while Naomi cooked and cared for the babies, filling the air with laughter and soft songs. The place that once echoed with loneliness now sounded like home. Ethan helped Naomi find her footing. Again, he drove her to town, helped her enroll in nursing classes, something she had always dreamed about but never thought possible. He used his connections quietly, never telling her how much he spent, because to him it wasn't charity, it was purpose. For the first time in years, he felt alive. Every sunrise a reason to get up. Every smile from the twins a reminder that life still had beauty in it. The twins grew stronger, giggling every time Ethan lifted them into the air. They began calling him Uncle Ethan, and each time they did, it pulled at something deep in his chest. Naomi would watch him with soft eyes full of gratitude, but also something unspoken, something new. One evening, as the sun melted into the trees, she stood beside him on the porch. The air smelled like pine and peace. She looked at him and whispered, "You saved us." Ethan turned to her, smiling gently. "No, Naomi, you saved me." They stood there in silence, the shack glowing in the golden light. Two broken people who had somehow pieced each other back together. Ethan realized then that maybe wealth was never about money or success. Maybe real wealth was moments like this: quiet love, laughter after pain, and the courage to start again. Sometimes life takes everything from you so it can give you something greater. Ethan went searching for peace, but he found purpose. Naomi lost everything but discovered family. Together they learned that healing doesn't come from running away, it comes from letting love in. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of hope.